I don't have too much besides, what the state is saying. I have something I'd like to read, and that's about it.
Read it?
It was mainly, I wrote this already, it was addressing to the court, but I'd like to address it, with the family, the court. I didn't know exactly how I was
You
gonna
can read it.
proceed, so
Go ahead and read it.
I wrote it, addressed the court, but family as well. It was, I first want to express my sympathy and deep condolences for the loss of Luis Garcia. The last 4 years have been a tough time, not only for Louis and his family, but everybody that was involved in the situation. I considered and still do consider Louis a dear friend of mine, who enjoyed many things together, church, prayer, dinner together. It's a sad thing that this world brings to us. We have to get through this as God and the people it brings to us. Sometimes I sit and question myself why certain things happen as they do. It brings me to a point that the fact that God has our best interests in mind. And I know one day God will restore us and bring our hearts back together. That's all.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further from the state?
Nothing here right now.
Okay.
No. When you get a moment, may I address court or something? Just one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know, obviously reading the state's memorandum about asking for, the sentencing and, the factors of, what they consider to be true. The only thing I have to say about that is, I just ask the court, I guess, to trust your judgment to deem what is fair and right, based on the facts of what you believe. And I know they obviously prosecutor and they're looking one way, and I know there's always sometimes different sides. I know normally the defense would be saying something, we would want this or this or this, there's so many years, in regards in respect to what they're offering, they're offering 4-year life, and, I'm assuming my attorneys were offered something, probably try to get lower. That's not what I'm really asking them. What I'm asking is, like I said, the prosecution has one side, and they're dealing with it from, one view. And I just ask, try to, and I know you will, and that's why I trust your judgment, that, just consider everything. And I'm not gonna put a number out there, because I'm not the judge here. I believe that you're fair in your judgment, so I'm just gonna trust that and whatnot, whatever you deem is fair and right, that's all.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Castiglione, would you please stand? And just for the benefit of those in the back of the courtroom, all my letters and all my stuff is electronic, so that's what I've been looking at up here. Just not staring off into space, I'm reading through the letters and everything that have been submitted electronically. Might not be obvious from back there, but that's what I've been looking at. As a judge in sentencing, I always try to figure out why something happened. And from there, I can usually proceed to figuring out how to address why it happened. Sometimes it's because of substance abuse, sometimes it's because of mental health issues, sometimes it's because of the personality traits of the people involved. And so I always am at an intuitive level drawn to trying to figure out why a crime occurred. And it doesn't matter whether it's shoplifting, doesn't matter whether it's an assault or a possession of drugs. And as many have articulated much better than I have or could, the question of why in this case just remains unanswered. And I've considered all the facts that I heard at trial in this case in trying to figure out what the appropriate sentence is without being able to answer the question why. And I think it's very unsatisfying for everybody in this case. I think there are a lot of people that would like to know why. Family members, your sister sitting back there, would want to know why. I think it's just natural for us to try to understand how something happened. And we can't in this case, so it's left unanswered. When sentencing, the judge has to consider many factors. They're all outlined in the briefs. And I know that your previous attorney has made several objections to the PSI, which after reviewing the memo, I understand every one of the objections and for the most part agree with most of them. I'm not relying on the PSI in my assessment here. The facts I see, I kind of understand the trial a bit differently than I think the PSI narrative did. I've tried to define what I think are the characteristics in this case in fashioning the sentence. At the end of the day, I keep coming back to some facts that are, I think, very, very strong for the state. And that is a completely blameless, by all accounts, wonderful human being was murdered by firing around into his head of a kind of hollow point expanding bullet at very close range from behind. Those facts speak largely to me about kind of how this murder was carried out without answering the question why. I actually don't need an answer to the question why in this case. At the end of the day, it was the jury found you guilty of taking the trigger, going behind Luis Garcia and pulling the trigger and murdering him. There's no signs of struggle, no signs of forced entry. And your family and Mr. Garcia's family are wrestling with why. How did this happen? I know there was some evidence about some disagreements of Bible studies, but I'm not convinced that played into this. One thing I'm not considering in sentencing is the suggestion of the state that you took no responsibility for this. I wouldn't consider that as an aggravating factor or a mitigating factor or any factor at all that put the state to its proof. I also know that many of the family members were looking to you for some type of reaction and show of remorse. Sometimes I see that as the defendant, sometimes I don't. When I do see it, it means something to me. When I don't, I'm not sure how to interpret it because I know a bit about you, Mr. Castiglione. I know you're on some, I'll call them heavy-duty medications, and sometimes that affects how people present and how they react to stress and how they look. It flattens their affect, and that's just a chemical process in the brain, and that may be true for you, it may not be true. So when I don't know, I don't automatically say it's lack of remorse. So I'm not quite sure, I know the family kind of talked about that, but I just want to explain why I don't personally attach as much significance to that, because I see many defendants who have no affect, and it's for reasons beyond their control. I am struck by the impact that this has had on the family. Clearly, the victim played a prominent role in his community. He played a prominent role in the lives of his family, and there's no way to replace that loss. And in that regard, he was unique among his peers and his family members. And I'm very much aware of what the victims have had to say and the family have had to say about his loss. And I really do empathize with that. It's very obvious. It's also remarkable to me that the family has an overwhelming level of forgiveness based on their deep religious faith, which quite frankly I find refreshing, because I don't see that all that often in this courtroom. A lot of compassion flows from this side of the aisle to that side of the aisle, and I think it actually goes the other way too, because there are no winners in this room right now. There are none. There's no one that's ever going to leave this room feeling good about themselves. I know I certainly won't. I've been a judge for a while. I've been a lawyer for almost 30 years, and I've handled thousands of criminal cases. I've prosecuted murders. I've defended murders. I've interviewed clients in jail. I've been on both sides, and I've seen a lot of cases. And this one is unique. This one's squarely unique. I can't reconcile how such a senseless act of violence happened. And it was extreme violence. Gun violence, which is an aggravating factor. The sentence I've decided is based on balancing all the factors that I have to consider: rehabilitation, punishment, specific deterrence, general deterrence. For the most part, I agree with the state about the weight to be ascribed to each one of those factors in sentencing. I wish I could say that this is a clear case of mental health issues. I did press the state kind of hard early on about that in this case. I know that there are some at play in your life, Mr. Castiglione, but I can't really connect them to how this played itself out, other than religious beliefs, which I agree with the state. I can't really find that that's a mental illness. There may be something there, I don't know, that explains this. So it's unmitigated violence, and involving the death and quite frankly the murder at close range with a handgun of a blameless victim. I think punishment has to weigh heavily in this case. I think deterrence on gun violence has to weigh heavily in this case. And also it has to count for what has been lost by the family in this case. Actually both families, because he was a leader for both families. The sentence that I find appropriate after balancing all those factors and considering the factors is 42 years to life. And I chose that 42-year mark because at parole, that'll be, with the pretrial confinement credit, you'll be released at 64 years of age, which is the date, the age that Mr. Garcia would be on the 22nd of August. I think that's appropriate in this case. So when you walk out, maybe you'll pick up where he left off. I don't know, but I think that's an appropriate sentence in this case. I'm recommending to the jail that you be screened for drug and alcohol treatment needs, because I know you need them based on my review of the jail disciplinary issues, and I think that's the appropriate sentence in this case. I'm going to endorse that order. Sir, you have a right to apply for sentence review. That's a panel of 3 judges. They can increase the sentence, they can decrease the sentence, or they can leave it alone. The clerk, when I adjourn here, is going to give you that notice, and you can apply for sentence review. Your lawyers are going to have 30 days to prepare a notice of appeal, which they'll do on your behalf. And I'm going to do that order when I leave here so that the attorneys have clear guidance on what they can and can't do for post-conviction relief. I think that's the appropriate sentence. Court stands in recess.
wish to file for secretary's review, I'll give you the original copy. I'll give a copy of the sample council as well. The state, you also have the same right, should you wish to exercise it, I suppose.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.